Here we are with the man of the hour, Felipe. So we're going to kind of dive in a little bit here. So just to kick things off, Felipe, you've been our winemaker since 2006, which was our second vintage at Skip Stone. Tell us, like, what was the, how do you make up your mind to join a winery, and what was it about Skip Stone that attracted you to us?
Okay, you know, obviously, first of all, happy to be here. Thanks to having me, and I hope we're all going to have a good time. That's what it's all about. Trying to experience more and more of those virtual tasting. So it's I feel like going to be the new normal, a little bit, at least for a while. But, you know, going back to Fahri, is a good part of it is like I can really talk dirty about him because it's probably 2 or 3 in the morning in Europe right now. So I don't.
Yeah, he's not gonna see this, so feel free to, to say whatever you want.
It's really, you know, always some kind of accident in life in a way, because I was involved with a neighbor program actually back then with Ferrari Corano, who has a winery / vineyard just next to us, I would say, to Skip Stone.
Yeah.
And so I was very familiar with the area in Alexander Valley. And so when I was approached by Fahri to possibly work together, I mean, it was, you know, honestly, a very easy and quick call for me. I liked him. And again, I don't say that because he's actually not watching, but really I liked him very quickly. Fahri has, you know, this European background. So I would say we got kind of along pretty quickly because he's also has this international mind, which is in a way, has an international palette. So he has a little bit the same vision and the same style of wine than I do. But more importantly, I would say it's really came down to, as we all know, the vineyard. We all know that's basically the site, the land, the terroir, the soil. And the aesthetic, and the aesthetic of the place is what really drives you to start something. It's like you go, you walk around the vineyard, and you're like, my goodness, this is so beautiful. I have to make a good wine out of this place because of that. And so the great news for me also was, the vineyard was planted, or mostly planted, when I started to work. And so you're always worried about, obviously, the architecture of the vineyard from you know, the place, if basically you take over a project and the vineyard is already in place. The good news is, you know, the vineyard, Fahri was working with one of my good friends in Napa to really design this vineyard. So I really knew about the vineyard as well in terms of the rootstock, in terms of the clonal selection that they did, in terms of the spacing as well. And it felt very familiar. It felt intensely I felt like a little bit home. So that's pretty much why basically I connected and kind of decided to jump in back then in 2005.
Great, other wineries, but what do you find is the main difference between working with Skip Stone in our site in particular, but also just some general differences between this area of Sonoma and Napa Valley?
You know, you guys have to realize back then in early 2000 and even the 90s, basically, Alexander Valley was known with basically larger wineries. Yeah. And I would say not 100%, but let's say with more commercial wines. So the philosophy of Fahri, in a way, where Napa was really developing a little bit more intensively those estate wineries, those estate wines made with really from one estate, from one place. Sonoma was really at the beginning of it, and really I felt like Fahri and I has this kind of vision. Let's bring a little bit of this good, what we felt good Napa spirit into Sonoma, and let's try to really focus about the site and the place basically, and what we can do the best from there. So that's how it started, and we really wanted to be the new voice of Sonoma as well. We really wanted to develop, you know, those more, let's say, high-end or smaller volume kind of wines. That's pretty much how it started. Then we knew that Alexander Valley compared to Napa has, like you say, differences in style. So a main challenge, because also I experienced that previously, was really, I think, being a shorter growing season, which mean, and it's very much on the detail, but which mean what? Which mean we have the fog coming really during the spring and the summer, mostly the summer actually. We kind of slow things down a little bit. So we start to ripen the fruit a little bit later than Napa, and then after the cold arrive, like late October. So we have basically a slightly shorter growing season compared to Napa. And sometimes this translates to tannin management. So we knew the key of the success of really making some great wine from Alexander Valley was really the tannin management. How can we manage the vineyards to really get the same quality and the same sophistication of tannins from Napa? That's really what the key. And I think, you know, obviously, what do we say? There's an English expression that basically you have to taste the wine and figure out yourself. But really, that was kind of the target. Then after, in terms of the tradition of winemaking, I would say, you know, we wanted to bring the traditional European winemaking philosophy, but we wanted to also feel like we're working with California fruit, we're working with Alexander Valley fruit, so that needs to be reflected into the wines that we created.
Why don't you tell us, like, what is it that you look for in, like, you know, classic Cabernet, like from a hillside vineyard like ours? What are those characteristics that jump out to you?
But I want to start mentioning that why in a way, why Cabernet is so popular, why Cabernet Sauvignon is so popular, you know, especially in California, because we planted different type of grapes. California was not king back, you know, in the 1800s, and when we started to plant in Bordeaux, even, you know, Merlot was a star, and still actually people don't realize it's the highest grapes planted in Bordeaux. We on a fast track here. We want to experiment, we want to learn, and we learn it fast. And at the end, there's a good connection between winemakers and consumers. We always, as a winemaker, wants to learn from the consumer. What do they like? What do they do not like? So that really helps us to guide us to really do something. So what is really classic flavors about Cabernet? I think the beauty of Cabernet Sauvignon, it's one of the grapes when you taste the wine from Cabernet Sauvignon, so it really gives you pleasure. There's a lot of grapes who have, you know, are almost more intellectual minded. They have a little bit of pleasure here, but something a little weird here, and you never know exactly what's happening. The Cabernet Sauvignon is really a grapes who are bringing you some beautiful aromatics. I mean, I would say the classic is like even the 16, you have, you know, the classic crème de cassis, but you can have some chocolate as well. So basically you have a panel of white berries, from red fruit to black fruit, which is very, very pleasing for most of the people. And you have also a sense of almost creaminess, this kind of lactic feel, this creamy, which is very inviting. It's almost like, you know, build the texture of the wine. And then in a perfect scenario, of course, I was talking about the tannins. Then you have, rounder, softer, very appealing tannins in some cases. And some vintages, those you just need a little bit more time. But the great part of California, as you know, compared to Europe, is those tannins, because the sunshine of California is so beautiful, the tannins get riper, and so have a tendency to be a little softer. And that's why I think we can really make those kind of, I hate to say it, but almost perfect Cabernet Sauvignon in this part of the world.
I love when people kind of try and knock us sometimes. There's old world purists saying that our wines don't age as well, but I can 100% say I disagree with that. What, you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say we're still learning. I mean, that's why the beauty of it. It's like, and it's easy, there's always, it's part of the business. There is always the critics of the wine and winemaking, and then sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong. I mean, but basically, in terms of aging, is a very complex phenomenon, because basically the classic, critic that I would say on California wines, they are slightly higher alcohol than in Bordeaux, so they have less acidity in the wine to really help them to age well. So I would say it's really the big question is that what is the fundamental part of the wine that will help the wine to age so long? And really it's kind of the big question is like human, basically the people, why someone sometimes, small and tiny and are going to age longer than someone a little bit more athletic, if you wish. So I think it's really start there about understanding the fundamentals of wine. I always say it start with the foundation. That's why the blending of wine is very important. You need to have really, I would say, a good foundation. That means a good balance of everything that you need in a wine. The alcohol, the acidity, and of course, the tannic structure, all those three parameters needs to be in balance. And they're in balance, they are usually have a better chance for the wine to age longer.
Yeah,